But, Mark, let's end everything out before we make our picks for Week 14. We're going to end up with still NFL draft discussion here. If you didn't catch our Baker Mayfield, you're on YouTube. Go ahead and check that out. But now we're looking at the Cleveland Browns, a team that I mentioned in that Baker Mayfield discussion. But now we're just going to look at the Browns, and I'll just ask you right away, Mark, no more kind of teasing the subject. Who do you think the Browns could draft number 1 overall? It's very early, but who could they draft? And we're going to say could, because obviously we're not going to tell you will, because next week we'll tell you who they will.
Well, who could they draft? I'm glad you asked it in the way you did, because the answer is literally anybody. They're number 1 overall. They have their choice. No, I think the first thing that everybody needs to say, and the immediate answer out of everybody's mouth when they say, who do you think the Cleveland Browns will probably draft? It should be Josh Rosen. I mean, he is one of those clear-cut prospects as a quarterback. I mean, this guy's got the fundamentals you want. He has had great season. He's doing everything that he needs to do to solidify a top pick as a quarterback. Now, the flip side is, of course, Cleveland Browns just got Kaiser last year in the second round. Do they want to do a Cleveland Browns-like move of saying, yeah, we thought we made you think you would be the future, but we just drafted somebody instead. That is a very Cleveland Browns move. Now, it's not the wrong move because Kaiser hasn't done very great this year.
Also, one thing I want to bring up, and the only reason why I'm bringing this up is this is something that you have mentioned, of course, in past podcasts, and you're on this boat. It all depends on what the Browns also do on Black Monday.
Yeah.
What if they go 0-16 and they decide, hey, Hugh, it's not working out. Goodbye. Bye, Felicia. And they get rid of him.
I mean, there's a good chance they go even 1-15 and still say,
bye, Felicia.
Yeah, get out of here, please. The man was not what he kind of was promised. I mean, he's had 2 years now, and he's won a single game. That's it. And this roster is not as bad as a 0-16 team would need to be. And a lot of that's been terrible handling of the quarterback situation. And I think that's something
Do they really have a true quarterback, though? Do you think
they drafted one in the second round?
I know, I get that. But do you honestly think that Deshaun Kaiser's the guy?
No.
Not now, eventually. Do you think he'll ever be the guy?
No, because I think they're going to draft a quarterback in the first round, most likely. Yeah. I'm not going to give away if that's for sure what I'm saying, because they have multiple picks.
But let me ask you this, and this is just me getting on this a little bit. Let's say they're not going to, and you're stuck with Deshaun Kaiser in your hypothetical situation.
Yeah.
Are you confident he can develop into the guy? Because I
think potentially.
Because I'm not. I'll take I'll take Rosen or Darnold over Deshaun Kaiser.
I mean, if I had the choice, I'm probably going to take a quarterback over him. But of course, like I said, they picked 7th as well, so they have another opportunity to.
Could have 2 top 5 picks depending on how bad the Texans do.
Yeah, I'm just going 7th off of just whichever random order we're looking at. And you're completely right on that. Especially because when I think of what I would like to have, if I'm the Cleveland Browns, a big thing I want is, of course, defense. It's always going to be defense. But something else that I want is some good wide receivers. I think that we're seeing a little bit of an uptick in Kaiser right now, and part of the reason we're seeing that, of course, is going to be Corey Coleman playing and helping him out and getting some success that way. If we can get some weapons to help out Kaiser, that's going to help. And part of the way you can go is you can say, let's just get a really good running back. Other thing is you can say, let's get a really good wide receiver. Number 1 overall, I don't think there is a Calvin Johnson or an Adrian Peterson type of guy out there.
The number 1, depending on who you ask, I know Brandon didn't have him number 1, but most people have Calvin Ridley from Alabama as their top wide receiver. However, he's not going to be a guy you look at 1, 2, 3. He's a guy that you could look at 5, 6, 7 with that Houston Texan pick.
Yeah.
If you have it. And that's one thing that they do have. They have the option to, hey, we can pick with that. the one thing that you mentioned that I kind of want to hit on, and I was kind of thinking about it, is there's a guy who's not in the Heisman discussion. He was actually snubbed from it. Running back from Penn State, Saquon Barkley. I know that, like, they asked Mel Kiper this yesterday or today, and he goes, I'll never take a running back in the first round. It's like, we get it, Mel. You can sit down. We get it. You don't like taking running backs in the first round. Yeah. But I look at, and I know I've had this discussion with Brandon. I look at Isaiah Crowell, and I go, you know what? Just under 600 yards this year, 2 touchdowns, an average of 3.8. Are you really the guy I want being that? Duke Johnson Jr., I know we drafted you. I thought that you'd take the job from Isaiah. You have not. Mm-hmm. Are either of you really the guy to be our running back? Oh, wait. Look at what the Jaguars are doing. Their quarterback had questions. They gave him a running back who's dominant, and now he's better. So let's do that. Part of me wants to say just do that and take Saquon Barkley number 1.
You could.
Who's a guy who can rush the ball or catch the ball out of the backfield.
And I think it would work out. It would make some of your other running backs that you have better coming off the bench and having some success there. Something that I don't think they will do, but I would like it because I really like what this player can do.
Okay.
Is Bradley Chubb.
Oh, I was going to bring him up next. Can you imagine Myles Garrett and Bradley Chubb just
this reminds me of like when the Texans drafted Clowney, and everyone was terrified of Watt and Clowney. The two had barely been on the field at the same time, but it was a good idea at the time.
Hypothetically,
I think that this is a way where you can make games manageable for your quarterback who you're not 100% sold on or who is not fully developed yet. If you can have a great pass rush, if you can keep the score low, then all of a sudden you're not a 0-1 win team anymore. Your quarterback who's not amazing can start to win you some games.
And I get that Bradley Chubb isn't on the same level as Myles Garrett, but his numbers are better than Myles Garrett was. Like, I looked at his numbers, and I'll look them up again just to fact check myself. I want to say his numbers were better this year than Myles Garrett was last year in college football. And I mean, with that, if he's a guy that can get after the quarterback and now you have 2 guys on the outside, and I know we're talking hypothetical here. You could draft him, could be a huge bust, but just the potential of what that could mean for your team. Then at 5, you can go and get a Calvin Ridley and go ahead, have your guy like Coleman have Calvin Ridley. I think he's going to be a guy that plays in the slot and will be a guy that does well in the middle of the field. But yeah, like this year at North Carolina State, 23 tackles for loss, 10 sacks for Bradley Chubb this year. So 10 sacks, 23 tackles for loss. Myles Garrett in his last year at Texas A&M, 8.5 sacks. So Bradley Chubb has a sack and a half more, kind of in the same ballpark, but 15 tackles for loss compared to what, 23? That's a huge jump. The most that Myles Garrett ever had was that 2015 season where he had 19 and a half, and Bradley Chubb has had over 20 the past 2 years.
Yeah. It's just one of those things for the Browns. They got to think about what they're going for. Do they want to readdress the quarterback situation again? Do they want to build upon a defense, which was not too long ago the strongest part of this team?
And who they got big parts last year with getting DeShone Kizer for the offense. They got Myles Garrett and Jabril Peppers. Like, those were the 2 big guys that they got to kind of bring into that defense. It was Peppers, Garrett, and David Njoku, who were their 3 first-round picks last year.
And it's the kind of thing right now where, for Cleveland, there's always the possibility of trading back. Insert your Moneyball joke here. Just trade everything away.
Do you think they should? I'll ask that. Should they trade the pick?
Why not?
With having the Houston pick, is that why you're saying yes? Because they have that Houston pick also?
Yeah, because I think a quarterback is not going to change the Cleveland Browns right now.
No.
Right now. So they can get away with missing on a couple of these quarterbacks.
Mm-hmm.
Now, the problem that they have is the fact that Cleveland never has a quarterback. But if they do that and they say, look, DeShone Kizer, we just drafted him last year. He needs more time. We need to give him time to develop.
Mm-hmm.
We're not going to ruin him by just replacing him and throwing him away right away. That is such a not Cleveland Browns move to make that you have to respect that. You might not agree with it, but you have to respect them going for it and doing it. So I think they can get away with missing on the quarterbacks here that everybody's in love with. Plus, we just talked about Baker Mayfield being a guy who might be in the second round. There will be options there. And I know I said I want nothing to do with Baker Mayfield if I'm Cleveland, but I'm not the one making the decisions.
You know who I try to sucker in to a trade? If the order is what it is right now, and let's say for the sake of argument here that the Browns executives are like, DeShone Kizer's our guy.
Yeah.
We're not bringing in another quarterback. We're going to entertain offers at least for the pick. The team I am trying to entice and sucker them into trading for the number 1 pick is the Denver Broncos at 4. And the reason why is in the last segment, you know how I said, well, Baker Mayfield might be a good fit because John Elway could kind of be a mentor to him.
Sure.
You don't think John Elway would look at Sam Darnold and be like, and the only reason I say Sam Darnold is and we're going to have this discussion this draft season. I know we are. We're going to have a Rosen Darnold discussion sometime this process. Here's my kind of cheat sheet for when it comes to Rosen and Darnold at this point. Rosen has the higher floor. Darnold has the higher ceiling. If you're looking for this year, go for Rosen. If you're looking for the future, go for Darnold. Either one of them. You don't think that John Elway would be Pavlov's dog, just saliva at the mouth for one of these quarterbacks, and he could get his pick of the 2 at number 1?
Yeah, I think it's interesting, but I think
he'd go Rosen because he thinks this team can win now.
Not even that. I just think that I don't think they need to. I mean, you got to really sell him that bridge.
Well, and that's what I'm saying. If I'm the Browns, I really try to sucker them into that. There's only one thing the Browns don't have that could help them do that. John Lynch. John Lynch, the ultimate, hey, I'm going to sucker a team into trading for the pick.
You love to say it every podcast, and I still don't buy you on it. But I think that the New York Football Jets are a team that you would be able to get to trade up because the Giants,
which they would be middle of the first roundish.
The Jets?
Wouldn't they? 1, 2,
they're a top
3,
10 pick
4,
right
5, 6. Let me see.
I think they're still. I don't know. They did just win, didn't they?
Yeah, 1,
Sunday,
2,
so I think
3,
that might have
4,
messed
5,
it up.
6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13th.
So they're not far out of the top 10.
They're in the upper half.
They would need to make quite the jump to make it happen. Not impossible. I would want them to do it because they don't have a quarterback right now. They have Josh McCown. That's not a solid long-term answer. They might be a team that does sit there and say, well, we'll wait for Baker Mayfield. But at the same time, they are a team where you can say, hey, the New York Giants, if we're not taking a quarterback, the Giants get the first pick, then the Broncos, then we have another chance to think about it.
Yeah.
And maybe this time we'll do it if one of those other two didn't do it. So if you really want one of these quarterbacks, you're going to need to jump everybody.
One last guy I want to mention out there, and I want to ask you what you would do in this situation, is I have seen, and this kind of brings in the quarterback situation. When I was watching, it was Greeny, Kuiper, and McShay talking about who the Browns could draft here. They threw out Josh Allen. And Josh Allen, the kid from Wyoming, who the one thing you got to take into consideration is this year he had a lot of talent lost to the NFL. Wyoming is not a team that, boom, we're reloading right away. He's a guy that's all potential. All potential. He's nowhere like Darnold, where Darnold can at least step in. And although his ceiling is higher, he could at least be your starter day one. Josh Allen, I think, is not a starter. He is all potential. Do you see him being an option for the Browns at 1 over Rosen, over Darnold?
No, I don't. 100% not at number one. There's no reason to take a guy who is a project at number one overall. That makes no sense.
Especially when you have Kaiser.
Yeah. You don't have... It's not like we're sitting here saying, I know we have Drew Brees, but we're going to need somebody in 2 or 3 years. You know? That's not what's happening right now. And the flip side of it, too, with Josh Allen is... You know, I know he was doing well when he had some of that talent, and now that talent is gone. And that does kind of... It is something you should take into account, but at the same time, you do kind of hope that a guy can make other players better. And he definitely didn't make other players better this year. And that would kind of scare me a little bit. To me, I am shocked that, for example, Mel Kiper has him at number 6 on his big board. That shocks me.
Do you want to know do you want to take a guess at where I had him on my big board?
I put him 20 or below.
I did not. I had him at 9. The only reason why I had him at 9 is because he's all potential.
Yeah.
And if he lives up to that potential, could be one of the solid
that's the problem
quarterbacks.
for me for the big board. Maybe I'm looking at it wrong, but for me, a big board should be who is the better player, not who will maybe become good one day. You know, that's not what I'm interested in. A big board, I want it to be who is going to make a difference now. The projects are something I can do in the 3rd, the 4th, the 5th round. And that's why Josh Allen to me is a fascinating quarterback.
Yeah.
He's going to be one of those guys that...
Well, he was a guy that early on, like I'm talking preseason, I had him in the mock draft that we did on the Primetime Podcast for the preseason. I had him 4th to the Jaguars because I was on the assumption that Blake Bortles is not your quarterback. You're going to replace him at the end of the year. I'm wrong. They're not going to replace him at the end of the year. And number 2, it's if he plays well this year, could be a top 5 pick behind Rosen, behind Darnold.
And he's a junior, right?
I believe so, yeah.
So he's got the potential to stay.
And that's the thing is with Rosen, Darnold, and Allen, I believe. I'm going to double check really quick.
Because Baker Mayfield's the only senior.
He's not the only one.
Well, I mean, of the main group.
Of the main group, no, Lamar Jackson is a senior.
Oh, I forgot about Lamar Jackson.
So the main seniors that we've got are Baker Mayfield, Lamar Jackson, Luke Falk. He didn't have as great of a year.
Yeah, I wouldn't really consider him in the main group.
But then you've got the 2 Joshes, Rosen and Allen, and Darnold. They are all juniors. Another senior is the kid from Oklahoma State, Mason Rudolph.
Yeah.
So you've got the Oklahoma boys, Lamar Jackson, and Falk are your seniors.
To me, Allen is one of those guys where if he comes out this year, which I don't think he should, but if he comes out this year, he's going to be one of those interesting ones. The ones where everyone's like, well, you could, you know, but why would you?
Yeah.
You know, and he's going to be one of those guys that goes in like the 3rd round, and the team that drafts him is going to feel like they got a steal, and there's a good chance he never amounts to anything.
Kind of like Connor Cook.
Yeah, actually, that's a good example.
Did Connor Cook go 3rd round or 2nd round?
I don't remember, but I would guess 3rd.
I know that when he was drafted by the Raiders, there were a lot of people that were like, wow, Raiders, I know they got Derek Carr, but they might have had a steal there. He was a 4th rounder.
4th, okay.
He was a 4th rounder. So
that's what I see Allen as. Not necessarily as a 4th rounder. I mean, I just see him as that type of player.
Except the only difference is Connor Cook went to a Power 5 school, Wyoming, not exactly a Power 5. The one that everyone's going to throw out there is obviously Carson Wentz, which I think is ludicrous because Carson Wentz has
that comparison doesn't make sense.
Carson Wentz has this.
Well, I don't want to say Josh Allen doesn't.
I'm not saying smarts. I'm saying like when I look at Carson Wentz, he has the maturity. He has everything, the total package.
You can tell when you look at him that he's mature.
Exactly. Well, I could tell through his college career how mature he was, and he was just the total package. With Allen, I look at it and I go, you're very raw, you've got the potential, but I just don't see that same leadership quality. And mainly, like you said, if you're such a great leader, you're such a great player, why couldn't you make other players better at Wyoming? I think that's a good point. Any final thoughts you got on the Browns at number 1?
You know, my thing for the Browns is just keep trying to trade. I know we make fun of the Moneyball thing, and
I don't think it's going to work. I have a video that yeah.
I just think that people need to, it works when you can get people to overpay. And that's what Cleveland needs. They have to understand, though, that if they're not going to get somebody to give up multiple first-round picks, then it's not worth it. Then you should get out. But, yeah, I think it could. Now, the flip side is, of course, you see a guy like Carson Wentz or you see like a Deshaun Watson or something like that, and you're like, oh, man, we could have had one of those guys.
They could have had Deshaun Watson.
But the flip side of it is, too, the Texans are a way better team than the Browns. The Philadelphia Eagles are not even playing the same football game as
and
the
I'm
Browns.
just looking at Deshaun Watson and Deshaun Kaiser because they were the same draft.
Yeah.
Deshaun Watson was a way better. I had him ranked higher than Deshaun Kaiser, and I'd rather have Deshaun Watson than Deshaun Kaiser.
But
so I wouldn't have made that trade.
And this is not a fair thing to say necessarily, but I'm going to say it anyways.
Okay.
One of these players is injured right now, and the other one's still able to play.
True, but which one do we think is going to come back next year and A, have a job, and
Kaiser has a job next year.
Kaiser, if they draft a Darnold or a Rosen,
Still has
he
a
might
job.
not have he might not be the starter. Is what I'm saying.
Well, that's a different thing.
Deshaun Watson comes back next year. He's the starter.
He is.
He won that job and took it from Tom Savage.
That wasn't hard. He's got the job, but those. The quarterbacks that are willing to get out of the pocket, the quarterbacks who are willing to run it, you know how I feel. I am scared of the injury. I am not a risk taker in that sense.
Brandon discussed it in our big board.
Yeah.
He brought up RG3.
It's right there. I am not the guy who wants my quarterback to take risks. I see Mitch Trubisky do it every now and then. I'm like, Mitch, just don't. The team's not good anyways. We don't need to win this game. Get down, please.
And one thing we're all about here on the Primetime Podcast is we're all about the long, or not the primetime, the onside kick.
Yeah.
We're all about the long play here. You asked a question at the beginning of the podcast. I have your answer for you.
All right.
Eli Manning held up the Charger jersey, giant hat. Pictures only show him in a giant hat. The only picture with a Charger is that Charger jersey on the stage.
With a big old frown on his face.
Never had the Charger hat on. So there's the question.
There you go.
That you had from our first segment. This is where you guys come in and let us know what you guys think down below. I know there's going to be people that have already said or are going to say, look, guys, the Browns aren't for sure the #1 team.
Yes, they
Two
are.
more losses.
Yes,
They're
are.
the #1 team. They play the Ravens. They play the Steelers. Good luck. You're the #1 pick in the NFL draft. Enjoy us. But let us know who you think could be. Here's a two-parter. Who do you think should be the #1? And then I want you guys to guess who you think Mark and I are going to put #1 in our mock draft next week for the Cleveland Browns. It's a two-part question. Who would you put? Then who do you think Mark and I are going to put as the #1 pick for the Cleveland Browns in our mock draft next week?